Welcome into the GoVols247 Podcast. Your ears are not deceiving you. We have some intro music here, finally, at long last. Little tune here on StreamYard, which is how we record these things. They allow us to video them, so this will be on YouTube. It is the Thursday before the third Saturday in October. I'm Patrick Brown. I'm joined on this episode by Ryan Callahan. We will get to plenty of stuff to get to in this episode. We're sorry we didn't have one earlier in the week. There was a basketball podcast as Tennessee got a commitment from Marquise Clark, a Chicago point guard. So go check that out. I did one with Ben McKee, and he offered some great insight on the latest pickup for Tennessee. But this will be all football because it's the third Saturday in October, and Tennessee is going to face Alabama on Saturday night in Tuscaloosa. So we will touch on the first injury report of the week and the good and bad from that for Tennessee and for Alabama, for that matter. We will get into the impact of this game, what it could mean for Tennessee's season long-term, what causes of confidence or for confidence there are for the Vols going down to Bryant-Denny Stadium, and what are the causes for concern as Tennessee is between a 7 and a 10-point underdog going up into this game against Alabama. And then we'll also get to a commitment. Ryan, Tennessee got a 2027 commitment from Kamauri Whitfield, a defensive back out of Florida. So we will get to all of that. But first, Ryan, tell us how you are doing on this Thursday here, 2 days before we get to go down to Alabama.
Yeah, doing great. Looking forward to going down to Tuscaloosa and inhaling some secondhand smoke as we have done in recent years. It's always just an endless cloud as we walk down to the media room after the game. But yeah, it's a fun week, always is, and a lot on the line for both teams. So ready to see a good game and see if this one goes any differently from almost every other time. Every other time I've been to Tuscaloosa, I've seen Alabama win. So we'll see if it's any different.
Yeah, my first trip down there was the 2005 game, which I've unfortunately come across clips of on social media this week, the Corey Anderson fumble game. My dad and I were sitting right in that end zone. We had a great shot of the football rolling out of the end zone, and then Brody Croyle throwing a downfield shot. I think it was DJ Hall, right, that caught that pass. And
I think so.
Set Alabama up to kick a field goal there to win 6-3. I was at the game 2 years after that as a college student, sitting up in the about the fifth row from the top. Still back then, I don't think they had closed in both parts of the stadium, so you can still see the cemetery that's right next to the stadium.
Yeah.
But I think Tennessee went to that game feeling pretty good about themselves and got shellacked. That was the first season of Nick Saban. So I was not at the 2009 game. So, but we don't need to recount all that history of Tennessee's struggles going down there because does any of that mean anything going into this game? Yes and no. But Tennessee did get some good injury news with the SEC availability report, easy for me to say, on Wednesday night. Probably the most notable thing there is that Deshaun Bishop was listed as probable. Josh Heupel had said Monday that he felt good about Bishop's chances of playing. So that would be an indication that he is trending towards indeed being available for Tennessee. And the way he's playing right now, that's a very good thing. 4 players have been ruled out. Both cornerbacks. Jermon McCoy will not be back for this game. We'll see when and if that is here over the next few weeks. Ricky Gibson obviously still out as well. He's still in a sling after getting hurt against Syracuse and is going to be out for likely all the rest of the season. And then the 2 freshman wide receivers have also been ruled out for this game. Radarius Jackson still with the upper body injury on the hit he took against Georgia. He is out of the sling though, so he's making progress. And then Travis Smith, who was a late addition to the injury report last week, was listed as doubtful on Friday night is when he first popped up there and was ruled out. He was watching pregame warmups in a boot, so he's already been ruled out for this game. So Tennessee's depth is a little shorn at wide receiver, but getting Deshaun Bishop back for this game obviously would be important for Tennessee.
That would be huge. I think that's a really big deal. A lot of focus on Jam Miller, obviously on the Alabama side, whether he's going to be able to play. But I think Deshaun Bishop's health is, probably just as big on the flip side for Tennessee's offense. I know there's been a lot of confidence in Star Thomas. He's not been quite as productive the last couple of weeks. Deshaun Bishop has been is obviously coming off a career high 146 yards against Arkansas last week. And just has been, pretty consistently effective, with the one exception being the Georgia game where he was a little bit less efficient against a pretty good defense there. But yeah, they need him in a game like this. Last week was a good Peyton Lewis game. Not sure that's going to be the case every week. So you need Bishop and Star Thomas out there, and Bishop, I think, always an important guy and an experienced veteran. So if Tennessee has him back, close to full strength or at 100%, certainly that would be a huge deal, because that looked like a pretty scary injury at the end of Saturday's game. That was not or in the second half of Saturday's game, I should say. That was not it didn't look like a minor injury at the time. It certainly struck me as something that was, maybe a high ankle sprain, something like that. But if he's probable for this game, and if that's a fair representation of the situation, I think that probably rules out a high ankle sprain, because that's usually a month to 6 weeks kind of injury a lot of times when it's pretty bad. So one thing that jumps out, I don't think we've touched on this a lot. Travis Smith Jr. I don't expect him to play this week. What I've heard lately makes me think Radarius Jackson will actually have a chance to be back before Travis Smith returns. So the doubtful, I think, is probably an understatement a little bit of the situation there with Travis Smith.
He's been out. He was ruled out. He was listed as out, not doubtful.
Oh, okay.
It was doubtful when he first popped up there on Friday night.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Game. Yeah.
That's right. So yeah, I think that's going to be a multiple week thing. It sounds like for Travis Smith, and then Radarius Jackson. We'll see exactly when he's back, but I think they're hoping that in the next week or two he's got a chance to return, and that would be pretty big. Kind of relying on those three starters at wide receiver, and if you went beyond that, it's going to be someone like a Joakim Dotson, or would they go to Amari Jefferson or Tommy Winton, or who would go in? So I think you're going to see those three starters pretty much carry the load at wide receiver. So that's not ideal, but for at least a couple weeks, it looks like that's going to be the case, that they have to kind of lean on those guys for pretty much all the snaps. And but yeah, that's pretty good news on the Tennessee front if Deshaun Bishop is able to play.
Yeah, on the Alabama front, they had a couple of players that suffered concussions against Missouri. Derek Meadows is a freshman wide receiver, right, Ryan? He's a familiar name from the last recruiting cycle. He has already been ruled out. Jim Miller was listed as questionable, so we'll see if he's able to go. He's obviously Alabama's best running back in their offense, and their run game has been much more efficient since he came back from an early season injury. I didn't mention that Ethan Davis is also questionable. If this would potentially be the fourth game in a row he could miss. He better get back soon, because they seem to be trusting Jack Van Dorselaer more and more. I think the freshman only played 7 snaps against Mississippi State, and then was over 30 against Arkansas, and they really leaned on some of that 12 personnel. Those 2 tight end packages with him and Miles Kitselman there in the second half against Arkansas. I thought he had some good blocks. There was a really good play. I think it was the first Peyton Lewis touchdown where he insert blocks on Arkansas's best linebacker and kind of drives him back in the end zone, and kept blocking him even sort of after the play ended, and he kind of got tossed to the ground. But when you're able to kind of do that and get that frustration out of a defender, probably got to feel good as a blocker. So there's a play I think in the fourth quarter where Kitselman made a big catch, and he kind of ran off looking a little hobbled. They ran Deshaun Brame on the field initially, and then they took him off and put Braylon Staley on. I think that was the play where Staley kind of knocked his shoulder a little bit weird there. He was down and then got tended to. He kind of walked off, kind of letting that shoulder kind of hang there, but he was catching passes from Jake Merklinger when he was warming up to go in after Joey Aguilar fell on the football, and was celebrating after the game. And he obviously is not on the injury report. So nobody at this point of the season is 100%, obviously. But the fact that none of those guys are on there, or no, Staley's not on there, and Bishop is probable is good news for Tennessee. Ryan, we'll touch on Jermon McCoy real quickly. What's the latest you've heard? Or is he going to be back by November? Or is it looking more like, or is he going to be back it's not going to be this week. Is it, is Kentucky on the table, or is it more likely November for him if and when he does come back?
Yeah, what I've heard so far makes me think more likely November at the earliest. A lot of people have started to say, "Oh, he's done. He's not coming back," and I get it. The fact that he's not coming back by the Alabama game, he will have missed more than half of the regular season after Saturday. So that's not what fans were hoping for or expecting going into the season. But this is just a tricky deal coming off an ACL injury, and as we've talked about before and touched on in last week's podcast leading up to the Arkansas game, just multiple factors to consider in that decision and how to handle things there, because it's an injury decision, and it's sort of a long-term draft stock and future outlook decision. So it's multifaceted, and exactly when he's back, remains to be seen. But I think there's at least some optimism and legitimate reason for optimism, I should say, that he will be back at some point in November. I could see after the open date, Tennessee gets another open date early in November. I could see maybe after that open date, maybe him coming back for the last few games of the regular season. So that doesn't sound like much if it happens, but that would potentially give him a chance to be available for a college football playoff appearance, and that would be a big deal, even if it's later than Tennessee had hoped for. But we'll have to wait and see if that's how it plays out, and it's still up in the air right now. Ethan Davis, I'll add, with him being questionable, I think there was some optimism coming out of last week that he would be available for this game. So the questionable tag sounds about right. And I think there's at least a chance, based on the latest I've heard, that he will play Saturday. So we'll be watching that one this week. And certainly that's one of the ones to keep an eye on going into this game to see if he is back. And that one's maybe closer to a coin flip than most of the others.
Ryan, as we look ahead to, excuse me, the this game, obviously it's the third Saturday in October. It doesn't, you don't need any much more motivation than that. But I'm not going to buy into the college football playoff elimination game angle that you're going to get thrown out. There's still so much football left, and we saw in this game last season. Obviously, Tennessee boosted its chances of making the playoff by winning this game, and they had to win this game after losing at Arkansas 2 weeks earlier. Alabama lost this game. They had already had a loss, right? Yeah, they lost to Vanderbilt a couple weeks. So actually on the same day Tennessee lost to Arkansas. That was a crazy Saturday in the SEC.
That's right.
Alabama lost this game and was still on track to make the playoff until it lost to Oklahoma. So 10-2 seems to be the magic number for an SEC team to get into the playoff. So whichever team loses this game is going to have no more margin of error. Alabama, if they're, we saw last season that 9-3 is on the outside looking in. But if Alabama, they've already got some quality wins done. Tennessee at 9-3 probably would not have the quality wins to garner consideration. So what's the how not to say how important is this game, because that's kind of a dumb question, but just looking at some of the metrics, ESPN has Tennessee's playoff chances right now at 28%. If they win in Alabama, it jumps to 52%. So, but I don't know that if they lose this game that they're definitely out, or there's still a path there. So it almost seems to me that Tennessee has, in terms of looking big picture, more to gain from winning this game than more to lose. Does that make sense? Am I making sense? What are your kind of thoughts on that sort of angle of this game?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. I think if they win this game, it puts them really in good shape going into the final 5 games. It gives you maybe a little bit of leeway to lose another game still and be able to maybe make it. Now, the flip side to that is we don't know how many teams are going to have 10-2 records or better, and we don't know how the College Football Playoff Selection Committee is going to view, say, a team like Virginia wins out and loses the ACC championship game to finish 11-2. How would they view an 11-2 team that made an ACC title game versus a 10-2
Florida
SEC
State,
team?
who Alabama didn't beat?
Right. So not a lot of quality wins probably on Virginia's schedule, even if it plays out that way. But how would the playoff selection committee view a team like that was at least in their conference championship game against a team like Tennessee that, if you lose to Alabama, say, you don't have a lot of quality wins on that schedule. Vanderbilt would be a quality win at that point. Oklahoma would be. Beyond that, not a whole lot. Florida looks like it's going to be a pretty mediocre team by the time it's all said and done. So even if you go win at Florida for the first time in 22 years, I don't think you'll get a ton of credit for that one. Not a lot of opportunities for quality wins. So if it does come down to a comparison of resumes between 10-2 teams at the end, say it comes down to a team like Notre Dame and Tennessee for an at-large berth, that's maybe the one scenario where Tennessee still might be in trouble. But generally speaking, I think 10-2 is probably going to be enough to get Tennessee in, to get most SEC teams in, because I don't think you're likely to have 5 SEC teams that get to 10 wins in the regular season. It's on the table, but they're beating up on each other enough. You're probably going to have some teams that lose another game at some point and get to 9-3 or 8-4. So I think it'll probably narrow itself down to 4. And so that means, you take care of even if you lose to Alabama, you take care of business the rest of the way, you can make the playoff. Alabama loses this game, takes care of business the rest of the way, they're going to be in the playoffs. So, it's definitely, I agree, not a playoff elimination game, but it's one that for whoever loses this game, it obviously takes away your margin for error the rest of the way. You've got to go undefeated. You can't look at 9-3 as like a fallback plan that maybe if the chips fall your way, you can get in at 9-3. I don't see that happening in all likelihood. So you need to take care of business the rest of the way. And so if you're Tennessee, you'd rather not be in that situation. But I think they have a lot more to gain winning this game. And like you said, their playoff chances would significantly increase if you win this. Whereas you lose, you got to beat a pretty good Oklahoma team. We'll see how well they're playing, how well John Mateer is playing by November 1st. They got a couple weeks to straighten things out after losing to Texas. We'll see. Vanderbilt's been pretty good to this point. That would be a tough game. You got to go to Florida and win. So few tough games left for Tennessee. I don't think you ideally would like to be in the situation where you have to win out to make the playoff, and a win Saturday would be huge, obviously, to give them a little bit of leeway to have any potential mistakes along the way.
Yeah, I've been playing around with the ESPN playoff predictor. It's kind of a fun little hypothetical tool. It lets you pick a team and you kind of pick the winners, how they do in their 3 toughest games, which according to ESPN analytics is Alabama, Florida, and Vanderbilt. So Oklahoma's not even on there at this point.
Wow.
And you can, if you simulate it, Tennessee losing this game, but then winning the other 2, and obviously that's assuming winning out everywhere else. It's the playoff percentages are upper 80% if you don't make the SEC championship game. And even if you lose the SEC championship game, it's still around 70. So your odds are still pretty good, even if you lose this game and win out. And if you win this game, but lose one of those 2, the numbers are about the same. So it's not quite a playoff eliminator. Let's not get into that. Obviously, though, it makes your path a lot easier. I don't want to say easier, but you just have, as you touched on, Ryan, that margin for error that you might need. This is a tough league. And the team, Tennessee last season was able to, outside of the Georgia game, sort of hold its nerve late in the stretch, late in the season with so much on the line. Will this team be able to do the same if it's in that similar situation? We'll have to find out. But to me, this has got to be a kind of pride, respect, guts kind of game for Tennessee, because no one's given you much of a chance to go like you're. I don't want to play the disrespect card, but these are more similar teams, and I think the point spread and then some of the predictions that have been kind of out there on a national level. And I mean, the Chris Hummer and Brad Crawford are our colleagues at CBS. They both have Alabama winning and covering 9.5 point spread. I think Josh Pate also has Alabama covering and winning by double digits. You have, for the second week in a row, you've got players from the other team are trash talking your defense. Everybody says they don't pay attention to the outside noise, but I think in this day and age, it's almost impossible to not know about any of that, even if you are a player and you're in your bubble and you're not on social media and anything. There's still somebody in one of your classes, or you're going to have family members going to say, hey, did you see this? You see what they said about you? This is one of those games that, if Tennessee wants to separate itself and be the kind of program that it aspires to be and is openly aspiring to win at a championship level, this is a game that you need to go win. You need to go earn some respect. If you're a defensive player and you've not played well, and you've said that publicly, as we've heard Joshua Josephs and Arion Carter say after the Arkansas game, and you got Alabama receivers talking about it's a field of dreams to play against you, and you got other players taking shots at you, at some point your pride has to kick in, and you have to sort of say that's enough. I think back to some, Philip Fulmer teams, Ryan, that were good teams that maybe were getting discounted and in similar situations going on the road, and they just played really hard-nosed football and won some games as underdogs. So can that be this kind of moment for Tennessee? I think, for all the things that are on the line this week, I think that's something that stands out to me is Tennessee's just got to go sort of earn some respect here, because I don't think they're really getting a whole lot going into this game on Saturday.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth to that. I think people think Tennessee's a pretty solid team, but I don't think nationally people know what to really think of Tennessee right now, because their defense is not elite like it was last year, when they were top 10 in the country in scoring defense and total defense and run defense. This is a team that's just sort of having to outscore people right now. And yet at the same time, they're making big plays defensively. So it's just a weird mix. It's, kind of, as we said, going into the open date, the team was about where we thought they'd be going into the open date. And that's still the case going into this game. I thought they'd be 5-1. But I thought it would look different. I thought this offense would be maybe a step down from where it is. I thought the defense would certainly be better than it is. But at the same time, their pass rush this year has been way better statistically than it was last year, when they had a pretty middle of the pack sack total. So now they're among the nation's leaders in sacks. They had 5 sacks against an Arkansas team that had given up 6 sacks previously. So they're doing some nice things. They're just not doing them consistently enough on defense. And I think that makes people look at this game and think, well, Alabama's figured it out since the season opener. Ty Simpson's playing well, one of the Heisman front runners right now. That this is just not a great formula for Tennessee to go on the road and break through and get a win on the road in this series. So I think to your point, not getting a ton of respect. At the same time, I think it's the game that'll tell us a lot about this team, because I think the narrative of this season will change a little bit based on what happens in this game. And I mean this. If they lose this game by 14, like they did a couple years ago, or 17 or worse, or something like that, especially, people are going to look back at their first 6 games, I think, and look at it way differently. They're going to say, okay, they played Georgia close, but who'd they beat? Syracuse isn't very good. Arkansas is not very good. Mississippi State, probably not going to win 6 games. They weren't impressive. And so I think that resume looks totally differently if they lose this game by 2 scores or more. If they play Alabama close, at least, and certainly if they win, then I think we've got a nice resume that shows us Tennessee's they're a roller coaster team, but they're capable of beating anybody on any given day, and they're going to be in any game they play pretty much. So I think this is a really important swing game kind of on the schedule, and we'll chart the path forward, I think, for Tennessee, because if they can at least hang tough with Alabama, let's face it, they were in this game, led at halftime 2 years ago, and then Bama just dominated the second half, and Tennessee couldn't score in the second half to keep it close down the stretch. And if they can just at least make this a true fourth quarter game, push Bama to the brink of an upset, the mild upset that it would be, I think that would at least be a step in the right direction. Not from the sense of a moral victory, but Tennessee, to me, hasn't proven that it can win this type of game on the road. That's the biggest hurdle for me. They've not really gone on the road and beaten quality teams under Josh Heupel, and that's not a knock on them so much. A lot of teams struggle with that in the SEC. It's tough to win on the road in this league, especially when you're playing a night game and what's going to be a tough environment. So it'd be a big step forward if they were able to win this game. So I'm not counting on it happening, but I also wouldn't be surprised if they pull it off, because this team it's a strange team. They sort of play with fire every week. They give up a bunch of yards, at least they have been lately, and they'll probably give up a good number of yards in this game, at least in the passing game. But they still are capable of making enough big plays that it wouldn't shock you if they went on the road and found a way to get it done, because Alabama's flawed too. So I don't really know what to expect, but yeah, I just think the fact that this program has not had this type of win on the road casts some doubt on it. And yeah, I think people are used to seeing Tennessee lose this type of game. And then, yeah, nationally, people aren't giving Tennessee much of a chance, because statistically they don't look that impressive. And Alabama, let's face it, the narrative around them is ugly opener against Florida State. They've kind of turned things around, 3 straight wins against ranked SEC teams. And they're thought to be one of the best teams in the SEC now. So they're getting the benefit of the doubt at home.
Yeah, Ryan, definitely a separator for Tennessee in terms of, okay, do you want to be seen as just a good SEC team, an 8-4, 9-3 kind of team, or do you want to be a contender at the top of the standings in the league and for the college football playoff? That's obviously the line here. And yeah, this would be a step for this program that they haven't taken. They've not historically played well on the road, like you mentioned. Nobody has. So this is obviously a huge opportunity for Tennessee. And in previewing this game for some stuff that has been and will be posted here between now and Saturday night, are these teams a little bit similar in the sense that, Tennessee's played 3 close SEC games, right? 3 games decided by 13 points, but Alabama's played 3 close SEC games too. They're not blowing everybody out. The Georgia game was down to the wire. Does that thing turn out differently if Georgia kicks a field goal instead of going for that 4th down there in the 4th quarter? Vanderbilt was in that game late. 2 red zone turnovers were obviously crucial in the outcome there. Missouri had a chance to drive, to tie or take the lead. Alabama had to convert 3 4th downs, including 2 on a touchdown drive in the 4th quarter to get a 2-score lead. So I see both these teams as flawed. I mean, for as much crap as Tennessee's defense is getting, they're allowing fewer yards per play than Alabama is. Alabama is 95th in the country in rushing. They've given up a ton of long runs. Their yards per carry against average is the same as Arkansas that Tennessee just ran all over. But Alabama's pass defense is really good. So that's a strength on strength matchup. And Alabama offensively, for all the hoopla around Ty Simpson, he's got fewer passing yards this season than Joey Aguilar. And Alabama has scored 30-plus points on 2 Power 4 teams. That was Wisconsin, who's terrible, and Vanderbilt, who they needed to score a touchdown in the last 20 seconds of a game that was already decided to get to 30. So I think these teams are maybe a little bit more similar than maybe a lot of people think. But yeah, I mean, Alabama's won 15 in a row at home, going back to 2023 when Texas won there early in the season, pre-SEC Texas. And Tennessee obviously hasn't won there since 2003. But what are some areas of this matchup, Ryan, that if you're Tennessee, you're thinking, hey, this is the dimensions or aspects of the matchup that we've got to exploit or maximize to give ourselves the best chance of winning? If Tennessee wins, what has to go right for the Vols on Saturday night, Ryan?
Yeah, I think it's you pointed to it right there. I think they've got to run the ball well. I think the battle of the running games is maybe going to be the story of this game, because I think Ty Simpson's going to make his plays. He's going to have a pretty good game. I don't know that he's going to throw for 350 and 4 touchdowns or something. I think some people have this. I was going to ask you what you think, because it seems like everybody's expecting a track meet, and like you were saying, Alabama's not put up a bunch of points this year.
They are playing ball control. That's what they're doing. They're holding the ball for 34 minutes a game and limiting possessions. So that's why I've got my score prediction in mind. You'll have to wait to see it until Friday. But I think Mike Rodak in our Behind Enemy Lines feature that you posted earlier this week, he has it 40-34. I mean, the punters will have to be non-factors for, I think, there to be enough possessions or just a bevy of big plays, which is possible. But for that many possessions, I mean, Alabama has just they played ball control. I think they've run almost 90 more plays than their opponents over the course of the season. That's 15 plays a game. That's a pretty big advantage. And that's sort of the interesting clash of styles in this game, is that Alabama is playing slow for all intents and purposes, and being methodical, and Tennessee is obviously back to their early Heupel era days of not caring about time of possession and just putting up a lot of yards without a lot of plays.
Right. So yeah, so I'm fascinated by that. But it's kind of a weakness on weakness matchup with Tennessee's run defense against Alabama's running game. We don't even know if Jam Miller is going to play. If he doesn't, that's a big ding to their run game off the bat. And then which side wins that battle? And then can Tennessee run the ball effectively against Alabama? We saw Tennessee run the ball really well a week ago against Arkansas. So if they have a, maybe not 260 on the ground again, but if they have a 200+ yard performance on the ground, I think they've got a real chance to win this game on the road. And that's a big deal. So I think it might come down to that. I think generally Joey Aguilar is going to get his to some degree. I think you can kind of pencil in, 220 at least passing yards, it looks like, that they're kind of, that's their baseline. And then, beyond that, just kind of maybe depends on whether they're clicking on all cylinders, whether it's a shootout. But the interesting thing about this going into this game, and this sort of goes in line with the discussion of whether this will be a track meet, Tennessee's offense seems to have taken a step back the last 2 games. And that, obviously they went on the road against Mississippi State, still found a way to score 41 in that game, but 2 of them were defensive touchdowns, as we touched on before. And then against Arkansas, you score 34. When Arkansas obviously had a pretty feisty offense, and a lot of people thought that was a game Tennessee would score 40+. They didn't. So is Tennessee's offense, kind of hitting a bit of a mid-season slump, and not in a big way, but just in a way where they're not scoring consistently like they were early in the season, not getting off to fast starts like they were early in the season. That's one big difference. They're not jumping out to 14-0 leads the last couple games. So or 10-0 or whatever it is. So they're an interesting team, still evolving. Teams are maybe figuring out how to defend them a little bit better. Obviously, Chris Brazzell had a quieter game last week. Part of that was maybe the way Arkansas defended him, partly because he didn't catch a touchdown pass that was thrown to him. But yeah, not a lot of balls thrown his way, and they weren't as effective getting it to him. But they've got other answers in the passing game with Mike Matthews and Braylon Staley too. So I think that's the big thing, is just, can Tennessee run the ball well, and will Joey Aguilar and Chris Brazzell do what they were doing earlier in the season and have a big day? If they can hit a couple passes over the top, even if it's not a consistent thing, just a couple big plays could make a huge difference in this game. I think that's going to go a long way toward determining whether Tennessee wins this game. And then defensively, they've got to get pressure on Ty Simpson. Point blank, that is the number one thing. They've got to stop the run, I think, to give themselves a chance. But to have any shot at winning this game, I think number one, they have to pressure Ty Simpson. That was the difference in their offense against Florida State. He was running for his life, and that was his first career start. So I think he's settled in. Alabama's figured out some ways to play to his strengths, maybe. But if they don't get pressure on him, and they've done a good job with that, they've got a good pass rush, But if they don't do that, it's hard for me to see them winning this game. So that might be number one on my list. But number two, they've got to run the ball effectively and kind of counter, like you were saying, Alabama's ball control offense. They got to be able to put some drives together consistently themselves. I think both offenses might be pretty efficient, even if it's not a quick strike offense kind of day. It might be a type game where you're trading 10-play scoring drives with each other and that kind of thing. So you've got to be able to run the ball to match Alabama's efficiency in the passing game, I think.
I do like the matchup for Tennessee's offense going into this game. It's can they play well enough on the road? They went to the road Mississippi State and frankly, was like a C game for them. 3 turnovers, drops. You had 2 touchdowns. You left some points on the field. If they could play, if they can get back to what they were doing, and I do like that this offense has different ways of beating you. We pointed that out coming out of the Arkansas game. They threw for a lot of yards against Georgia and Mississippi State. They ran for a lot of yards against Arkansas. So it's still the same. Pick your poison. If you're Alabama's defense, do you want to commit more to stop the run? Do you trust some of your 5-star DBs and your safeties and those guys to hold up in one-on-one coverage? Or do you want to sit back and make Tennessee drive the ball? Do you trust your front 6 and 7 to control that run game? Whereas you've given up some chunk runs here and there. So I do like this matchup for Tennessee's offense. I will say that, excuse me, that a couple of key stats I think in this game for Tennessee's offense will be third downs. They've got to be able to sustain drives because if you don't, you might not get it back for 5-6 minutes on the clock. With the way that Alabama's offense is playing and your defense is playing. And you've got to finish drives. You got to get in the red zone and finish drives. That was a big issue with Alabama. You look at in each of these 3 SEC games that Alabama's just won, there have been sequences where they have been able to get stops and or holds in the red zone. And so if it's going to be a close game like these teams have played, points will be at a premium. Points are always at a premium, obviously. That kind of goes without saying. But if Tennessee's able to finish drives with touchdowns instead of field goals, that'll take a little bit of pressure off their defense to get a stop and keep Alabama out of the end zone every time.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And they're just hard to predict what they're going to be week to week because that a team like Tennessee that has the things they have as strengths can go a long way. And this is to your point earlier, why I think a lot of people are maybe not giving Tennessee enough credit going into this game. You go on the road with a quarterback that you trust, that's not shaken by the environment and has done it before and capable of putting up big numbers. An offensive line that's protecting the quarterback well. Tennessee's given up 4 sacks in 6 games so far, and a defense that gets after the quarterback the way Tennessee does. Those 3 things alone can win you a lot of games. And then you throw in the fact that Tennessee can run the ball. And they've got at least one really good corner in Colton Hood that has been part of them making some big plays, getting their hands on some passes and recovering fumbles and things like that. They've got a lot going for them. So they're a weird team in the sense that there are a lot of reasons to be confident in their ability to maybe go on the road and knock off a team like Alabama. But at the same time, everyone's really down on Tennessee's defense right now. I get it. Tennessee fans are pretty worried after seeing that performance against Arkansas. I don't know. Maybe
Is this where I point out that Arkansas statistically is better on offense than Alabama?
That's what I was going to say. I just feel like I'm not as down on Tennessee's defense right now as maybe I should be, or certainly as other people are right now, because I just thought Arkansas was going to get some points against Tennessee. That's what they do. They score on everybody. So that's a pretty feisty Arkansas team, and Taylon Green's a tough matchup for anybody. And just because Arkansas didn't score a ton of points on Tennessee last year and they scored more this year doesn't mean this defense stinks. It just, Tennessee's obviously not a top 10 defense like it was last year, but they're doing some things well. So they're clearly not as good against the run. They still can maybe do some things to help with that. But I don't think this is going to be an elite rush defense. It's just not. And then in the secondary, they've got some limitations. I don't think they're very good at safety. Ty Redmond's getting picked on a little bit in some games, but he's a freshman who's otherwise playing pretty solid under the circumstances. So they're not. I don't think they're as bad as people are making them out to be, but I get it. They've had a couple uglier defensive performances lately that Georgia threw for a ton of yards against them. They've had a few performances lately that make you doubt them, but I don't know. I'm not quite as down on them because I see that they have some strengths. This is, someone threw out this comparison earlier this week, and I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. This is not the Sal Sunseri defense from 2012. That team could not get after the quarterback like this team. That team had almost nothing going for it defensively. So this is not a repeat of 2012. Tennessee's not going to be losing games, I don't think, 45, 42 and things like that. But yeah, they need to be better in some areas. But I think they're capable of patching things up at least a little bit. And it wouldn't shock me if they have a good performance here or there defensively. If they shut down a Kentucky, if they hold Oklahoma in check or something like that, it wouldn't shock me. So yeah, I do think Alabama's going to score some points. But yeah, I'm not quite as down on Tennessee's defense going into this game. And yeah, I think Tennessee's offense can do some things to help them in this game. You maybe don't have so many 2-minute scoring drives and things like that where you're having to have some injuries on extra points and things like that. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting matchup on both sides. But I'm not quite as down on Tennessee, I think, as a lot of people are this week, where it seems like fans are almost even beaten down by how Tennessee's defense is played. And I get it, but they're still a tough out for anybody they play.
Yeah, I also got to think that knowing Arion Carter, Josh Josephs, Colton Hood, some of these guys. I mean, the stuff that is from the other players they're about to play and teams are about to play, or for saying that can't sit well with those guys.
Yep.
So do we see sort of a pissed off defense? But Ryan, I asked you earlier what the causes of confidence are for Tennessee. What are the big causes for concern? Or if this game was to get away from Tennessee, is it as simple as the defense continues to give up big plays and points, and the offense goes into one of its road shells, and this one gets away from Tennessee, they lose by 3 touchdowns? Is it that simple? Is there something else that is a red flag for Tennessee if you're worried about this one getting out of hand or going, being a double-digit loss that you don't look good?
Yeah, I think that's the formula probably for how this one gets away from Tennessee. The biggest concern for me going into this game is just their pattern of not being quite as good on the road, and that's not like we said before, that's not an isolated issue that only Tennessee is dealing with. It's something that everybody in the SEC kind of deals with. Josh Heupel's road record not nearly as good as his home record. He's close to 500, I think, on the road. I forget what it is off the top of my head, but when you look at the numbers throughout the league, anybody but Georgia and Alabama is pretty much in the same boat. I mean, it's just hard to win on the road in this league historically, and even
Alabama
more
lost
so
3 times on the road last season. So
that's right. And if you lose twice on the road, guess what? You've only got 4 road games right now in this league. That means you're a 500 road team. You went 2-2 in league play. So even losing a couple, and that's what even a good team will do these days. Not a great team, but a good team like Tennessee was last year. You're going to lose a couple games, and they're probably going to be on the road, or there's a good chance that they both could be on the road. So I don't necessarily knock him for Josh Heupel for having the road record that he does, but that is a question about this team. They're a little more mistake prone on the road. They deal with penalty problems all the time, really, but they can be more pronounced sometimes on the road. And this offensive line, though, has been solid. They've dealt with some penalty issues, but they've not given up a bunch of sacks. They've not gotten flustered, but they've only been in one road environment so far. It was a bunch of really loud ringing cowbells, and that was a challenge, but a different kind of challenge. This is going on the road to face one of the best teams in your league, and quite possibly a legitimate playoff team. And you've got to not only deal with the environment, you got to deal with some really good players across from you. A lot of 4 and 5 stars on both sides of the ball. So yeah, I think the formula for this game getting away would be Tennessee not being as efficient offensively, and the defense being kind of what we've seen the last couple of weeks. And they've got to get. It's not even about sacks, I don't think, but they've got to get consistent pressure on Ty Simpson. If he has time back in the pocket, he's going to find some guys. They've got some good receivers. He's going to get his. It's not going to be 400 yards probably, but he's going to throw for a good number of yards through the air. They just have to get pressure on him to keep him from doing what he's capable of doing. And if Tennessee can do that, and they've not done it consistently, but they find ways to get sacks, and they have some stretches where they can kind of take over a game, derail a drive. If they do that a few times in this game and score their usual number of points, they absolutely can win. But yeah, the scenario for them to lose and lose by double digits is probably what you were saying. Not get off to a great start. Alabama, do its thing, and Tennessee's defense continues to struggle, and the Vols just kind of maybe can't climb out of the hole offensively.
Yeah, I think this game is Tennessee's defensive line has to show up in a big way, because I think that's where they've got to come up and help the other two levels of the defense, whereas that's maybe where this matchup is the most lopsided, because like you mentioned, Ty Simpson's playing great right now. He's in his zone. He's playing really well. He's got a lot of weapons around him. Jeremy Bernard. I mean, when Ryan Williams is like your third best receiver right now, I mean,
maybe fourth.
Yeah, maybe fourth. I mean, Latsier Brooks has come on. Isaiah Horton as a transfer from Miami has been good. Bernard's been their number one. Josh Cuevas, the tight end, has been productive too. They'll throw it to the running backs. Simpson is not immune to taking a check down when everything is covered downfield. So that would be a concern for Tennessee's defense, that you just can't make enough plays in pass defense. But yeah, we'll see about Jam Miller. I think the Alabama run game changes if he's not in the game. It's hard to trust Tennessee's run defense against anybody right now. But I think the formula for Tennessee's defense getting enough stops to win this game is you just got to get Alabama in some third and longs, and that's been not great for Tennessee. But statistically, even if you give up half of them, you're still getting off the field a few times. So,
and Alabama's running for less than 100 yards a game, I think, against SEC teams, and that's with Jam Miller in some of those. So to your point, if he's out, they're a different team, and even if he's in there, they've not been a great running game. They've just been okay with him. He's averaging like 4 or 5 yards a carry in SEC play. Deshaun Bishop's over here averaging 7.5 yards a carry. So they're not a great running game even with him. Without him, they could be pretty beatable for Tennessee. Honestly, that might be a run game that you should be expected to hold below 100 yards, because they've just not been very good.
Yeah, this defensive line is going to have to make plays. They're going to have to feast off the edge. Alabama's got Caden Proctor, who's a left tackle / running back / receiver / We'll see what they do. Maybe they'll kick an extra point in this game. I don't know. There was all the hoopla. He didn't score last week, but still pretty. The Georgia play is the one that kind of blew my mind, because it's just like they're throwing a bubble screen to a 360-pound offensive tackle. But on the other side, they got Wilcom Formby, who I believe is a freshman. So that's a matchup where, if you're Tennessee's Leos, Josh Josephs, Caleb Herring, Jordan Ross, that's got to be a point where you might be bringing pressure that way and see if you can get him a little bit out of sorts. Maybe you can win some one-on-ones. Alabama's offensive line is pretty good at the guard and center spots. They've got some experienced guys there. So that might be a tougher matchup to get interior pressure. But I'll be interested to see what the game plan is for Tennessee. Do they have to get aggressive to get pressure on Simpson? Because if you do that, you're going to be playing man coverage, with your guys. Obviously, you probably feel good about Colton Hood man coverage. He's playing his way into being a potential first-round pick, but that means your safeties and your linebackers are maybe in man coverage too, and that's maybe not where you don't want to be. The advantage of playing zone coverage, even if you're not good at it, is you're less likely to give up a bunch of, you're not going to give up home runs that way, right? And if you're able to make Alabama be methodical, maybe you increase the chances that over a 8, 9, 10 play drive, there's a mistake in there. You get a negative play that sets up a 2nd and 12, or you get a sack. There's different ways to go about it. So I'll be interested to see what Tennessee's defense can do. Offensively, I think they've just, the offensive line has to play well. This isn't vintage Alabama defensive line. And they're missing a couple guys in Rousseau and Latham that are really good, but they've got some guys that can make plays. Their linebackers are all experienced and very active, and they'll get the safeties in the run game too. So there's a lot of different things that can go one way or the other in this game, but I would just like to see Tennessee kind of play with that hard edge. It's like, hey, we're here to prove something. Sometimes, and you talked about this, about Tennessee's road record, it seems like they're not the aggressor, right? They're almost kind of in a shell a little bit, affected by the environment, especially when things swing against them. Now, this team showed a pretty good resolve at Mississippi State when things were kind of going against them there several times. So if you can bring that kind of attitude and that kind of resiliency, I've said this a few times this week, this is a flawed Tennessee team, but it's a pretty relentless team. I think it's fair to say, based on what we've seen so far this season. So you're going to need all of that relentlessness to travel with you, and you're going to have to bring it in. And I want to see Tennessee kind of play with that, like they're out there with something to prove.
Yeah, and one subplot to that that's really interesting to me, Tennessee, I think, believes it can beat Alabama now because they've done it twice in the last 3 years. I don't think they're affected by this matchup the way they might have been 5 years ago. So this is and they went into Alabama for the players who were on that team 2 years ago. They came out and punched them in the mouth. They got off to a really good start and led at halftime in that game. They were not
20-7, and it should have been a lot more. Tennessee missed some chances there.
Yeah, so I think they believe they're good enough to go in there and beat Alabama, and the players who've been on this team for multiple years certainly believe that. But Yeah, I think they still have to prove they can do it consistently for 4 quarters, because that's where they faded a couple of years ago. They weren't as good after halftime. Other teams have been able to make adjustments, and they've not had the counterpunch. This year, can they have the counterpunch? And I think it helps that, let's face it, what that team didn't have was the consistent quarterback play. Joe Milton was really good sometimes, and the other times he really wasn't. Joey Aguilar has been a little more, I mean, he's a little up and down sometimes, a little bit of a roller coaster ride, but he is a much more consistent player. And maybe most importantly in games like this, I truly think he doesn't let the previous play affect him. He's one of those rare guys that seems to be able to play in the moment and not get shaken by a mistake he makes. He just goes on and plays the next play. That's a really valuable thing to have in a quarterback going into a tough road environment. So I think that gives them a puncher's chance. If you've got Joey Aguilar playing at his best, that alone will keep you in this game. If you're Tennessee and you got Chris Brazzell out there doing what he does, that alone could be enough to give Tennessee a chance to win this game. On the other side, I'm watching Ty Simpson. He's played in a big game already. He went to Georgia, won in a tough environment there. He's playing against Tennessee, and I think this game means a lot to him. He considered Tennessee quite a bit coming out of high school. This is his home state school. He knows everybody back home, and Martin is watching this game. This is a game a lot of people that he knows growing up are care a lot about, and I'm sure he's gotten a lot of texts and things like that this week about this game. Will he put a little more pressure on himself than usual? He's still a first-year starter. I think he'll be fine. He's a pretty chilled guy when it comes to doing what he has to do on the field. But I'll be watching him closely to see if he maybe tenses up a little bit or puts a little too much pressure on himself going into this game to try to do too much.
On that note, that makes me think of what Caden Proctor said after Alabama's practice earlier this week, that Simpson and their meeting on Monday ripped our ass about their performance against Missouri. So maybe he's already getting a little on edge about facing the home state Vols. But before we get out of here, Ryan, a commitment to break down quickly here. Kamauri Whitfield, a 5'10", 170-pound corner. We have him rated as a 3-star, 88 rating. He's out of the First Academy in Orlando, Florida. Pretty good offer list, over 24 offers. A lot of SEC teams on there. It's a Florida player, so yes, Florida State, Florida, Miami all had offered. Several other power conference schools, Oklahoma. Let's see, Auburn's in there. So how did this kind of come about? What is this these early 3-star defensive back commitments have been, I don't want to say a trend, but we've seen this before with the staff, guys like Ty Redmond and Dylan Lewis in this last class. I'm sure there's some others I'm forgetting, but what do we need to know about Kamauri Whitfield, a 2027, the newest 2027 commitment for Tennessee?
Yeah, it's a second commitment for the class, along with JP Peace, the linebacker from West High School here in Knoxville, and a nice early pickup here. Like you said, he claims 30 offers, so I think we're missing a few on that list that I'll have to go back and find and add to that. But he's between 5'10" and a half and 5'11". He claims to be about 185. I think he's at least closer to 180 now. So a pretty good size, but a guy that projects as a nickel, I think, in all likelihood. So he'll probably play the star position in Tennessee's defense, and a really good player at that position. A willing tackler, pretty active, finds his way to get his hands on a lot of passes. And he caught Tennessee's attention at their 7-on-7 tournament, one of their 7-on-7 tournaments. They had 2 of them this year. One of those back in June. He was there with his team, and he said he had, I think he claimed 5 or 6 interceptions, a bunch of touchdowns. Just was making plays on both sides of the ball, and really caught the attention of Tennessee staff. They offered him that day while he was there, and Tennessee showed him a lot of attention from that point forward. And then he got back in town this past weekend, attended his first game at Neyland Stadium, and while he was there, it didn't have any intentions of committing going into the visit, and it just kind of struck him while he was there. Yeah, this might be the fit. So you see that happen sometimes with these early commitments. I know some people worry sometimes whether an early commitment like that will stick. You see that go both ways. We saw Brandon Anderson and Tyson Bacon commit to Tennessee last year and didn't stick. You've seen Braylon Outlaw stick so far, and he was a guy committed last fall pretty early. As you mentioned, Dylan Lewis and Ty Redmond the year before, Caleb Beasley a couple years ago. So sometimes these work out, sometimes they don't. But yeah, to get a guy from Florida with a nice offer list and that genuinely seems to just like Tennessee and has gotten a lot of attention from the staff for months now, I think this is a really nice early pickup. And you want guys like this, I think, to make the foundation of your class in most cases. You want to get these guys early, not have to fight tooth and nail to get them, because this isn't the type of player who's likely to be ranked top 100, top 200, but it's an important type of player to get. He could be defensively, at least he could be a Boo Carter type player because he's got that kind of build defensively, and has some versatility, can kind of play anywhere in the secondary. So could play some corner in a pinch, could maybe even play safety. Tennessee likes recruiting those types of DBs, as we know. And so, yeah, I think nice early pickup here. And on top of that, he's got a cool nickname. He goes by Bam. So you're probably going to hear him called Bam Whitfield in the coming years. Might even be listed as that on the roster. You never know about those kinds of things till they get here. But yeah, so that's a fun nickname and fun player. I think a lot to like about him. Andrew Ivins, our director of scouting, said he's a big fan of him, has seen him in person twice, and really likes what Tennessee is getting there. And with the way Tennessee plays kind of aggressively on defense, he thinks it's a really nice fit for the Vols.
Tennessee, plenty of coverage from Bam Whitfield's commitment. I'll call him. He's that for me now from moving forward. So plenty of coverage from Ryan on that commitment up on the site now. We have plenty of preview stuff for Tennessee and Alabama the third Saturday in October. We'll have our picks on Friday, our bold predictions, all of that fun stuff. So great time to go check out the site. We appreciate you guys listening. Ask you would subscribe wherever you get this podcast. Leave us a rating and a review. And go check out the site. Plenty of coverage. Great time. Obviously, a big game this weekend, and we have it fully covered here on GoVols247.com. So for Ryan Callahan, I'm Patrick Brown. We'll see you guys next time on the next edition of the GoVols247 Podcast. See you guys later.